My dear friend, have you ever sat down to dinner, placed a hot bowl of soup, some boiled greens, a few slices of meat on the table, only to feel suddenly like it was hard to swallow or that your stomach was weighed down as if by a heavy stone? You might think, maybe I ate too fast. Maybe my stomach is just weaker with age. And so you take an antacid, a little baking soda, or simply try to ignore it. Yet day after day it comes, back persistent like an uninvited guest. I've listened to so many patients share stories just like this. Men in their 60s, women in their 70s, even those just turning 50, they all had one thing in common. They believed it was simply normal, the price of time, a sign of getting old. But the truth isn't always that simple. I'll never forget John, a retired factory worker from Chicago. Strong, simple habits except for his love of charred grilled meat. One evening, as his family gathered around the table, a small piece of meat stuck in his throat. He thought it was just eating too fast. But from that day forward, swallowing became an obsession. A month later, he came to see me and we discovered early-stage esophageal cancer. The news hit like lightning, yet it was also a blessing because had he come just a few months later, his chances of survival would have been cut in half. You see, our bodies whisper warnings, but we've grown used to silence. We've grown used to dismissing it, to saying it's nothing, and sometimes that very habit, it's nothing, becomes the invisible bridge, leading us to a deadly disease. Stomach cancer and esophageal cancer, just hearing the names can make people tremble. But I want you to know this fear doesn't save us. Awareness, early recognition, and prevention do. I've always believed that knowledge, when shared at the right time, can save a life. Think about it. Our daily meal is not only nourishment, it's memory. It's family. Every time we sit down at the table, we aren't just eating rice or fish, but also stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. And yet there are diseases that sneak in, silently starting right from those meals, from the smallest habits we think are harmless. Another patient of mine, Linda, once asked me, I don't smoke, I don't drink, why did I get stomach cancer? That day I sat with her for a long time. I told her cancer doesn't choose. It can come from a bacteria in your stomach, from your family's genetics, from the salt in the pickles you eat every morning. And sometimes it's simply the result of years your body endured without proper care. She went quiet, then slowly nodded. When I share these stories with you, my intention is not to add more fear, but to remind you that truth lives all around us. And only when we face it can we change it. I'm not here today to bury you with medical jargon or lifeless statistics. I'm here as a friend, as a doctor past 60 who has witnessed radiant smiles when patients healed, and also tearful eyes when it was too late. I want to hold your hand so we can walk through this together, from distinguishing stomach and esophageal cancer to the simple daily choices that help prevent them. Because life is not just measured in years, but in warm dinners, peaceful mornings, and the laughter of grandchildren. And with all my experience, I want to place in your hands the key to protecting those treasures. So are you ready to take this journey with me? My dear friend, before we go any deeper, I want you to picture a simple morning. You wake up, pour yourself a cup of coffee, open the newspaper or your phone. Sunlight pours through the window and everything feels peaceful. But then as you sit at the table and take a spoonful of hot porridge, you feel a little difficulty swallowing. You frown, thinking, maybe the porridge is too hot or your throat is dry. You drink some water and continue. The next day, the feeling returns, this time stronger. The question is, what would you do? Would you ignore it and tell yourself it'll pass in a few days? Or would you ask, could this be my body's way of reminding me? In over 30 years of being a doctor, I've seen both responses. Sadly, most people choose to ignore it. They think the body will adjust, that a little rest will fix it. But the body is like an honest diary. It writes down signs, sometimes very small ones, to tell us something is wrong. If we flip through that diary too late, we miss the golden chance to stop an illness growing in the shadows. I think of a colleague of mine, a dear friend. He once told me about his father, an Italian-American man who ignored chronic heartburn for nearly 10 years. He thought it was just acid reflux from spicy spaghetti or cheesy pizza, until one day when swallowing became impossible to ignore, he finally went for a checkup. The result was stage 3 esophageal cancer. My friend still says with regret, if only my father had gone sooner. You see, sometimes even a delay of just a few months can mean the difference between life and death. That's why I remind my patients, and you listening now, never to underestimate small signals. There's something fascinating in medicine I want to share. Studies show that patients who detect stomach or esophageal cancer early can live 10, 15, even 20 more years with good quality of life. But if discovered late, that chance drops to just 1 in 10, which means sometimes a single endoscopy, a single blood test can give you another decade of life. Tell me, is 10 years worth taking action today? And I also want you to know, not everyone who hears the word cancer needs to panic. I once had a patient named Martha in her mid-60s. She was diagnosed with early-stage stomach cancer during a routine endoscopy. When she heard the results, she calmly smiled and said, "Doctor, I know I've been lucky." My body whispered, and I chose to listen. Her surgery went smoothly, and today, 7 years later, she's still healthy, tending her roses in the backyard of her little suburban home. I tell you this so you'll see that not everyone with cancer carries a death sentence. The real question is, do we listen to our bodies? Do we act in time, and are we willing to change our lifestyle? I know that at 50 or 60, many people think, I'm old, why bother? With health, I'll just live however long I have. But I always ask, have you ever looked into your grandchild's eyes and wished for just a few more years with them? Another New Year's gathering, the birth of a grandchild, an afternoon in a rocking chair listening to birdsong. Aren't those worth caring for your health a little more? Life, I believe, isn't measured in years, but in the moments we are still loved, still able to share. And health, especially digestive health, is the ticket that allows us to be present in those moments. So when I begin talking with you about stomach and esophageal cancer, I don't just want you to hear about disease. I want you to hear about life, because understanding illness is not to fear it, but to learn how to keep our days of peace. My dear friend, let's take the next step together to clearly distinguish between these two diseases, stomach cancer and esophageal cancer, because only with true understanding can we prevent them properly. My dear friend, I want you to imagine your stomach and esophagus as a long road, carrying food from your mouth down into your belly. That road begins at your throat, the esophagus, and ends in a storage bag we call the stomach. Every day we send countless meals down that road, bowls of rice, pieces of braised fish, even a morning cup of coffee. And each day that road works quietly, without complaint, without asking for thanks, until one day it starts to cry for help. Esophageal cancer often begins right along that tube. A person might notice difficulty swallowing, even choking while drinking just a sip of water. I still remember Mr. Charles, a tall, slender man in his 60s who loved a small glass of whiskey every evening. He told me he often felt a burning pain when he swallowed, as if something was stuck in his throat. He thought it was just a sore throat, but in truth it was cancer cells silently growing inside his esophagus. Stomach cancer, on the other hand, is a different, quieter enemy. In its early stages, it often gives no clear symptoms. Some people only feel bloated, full too quickly, or unable to eat much. I recall Mrs. Susan, a kind woman with a gentle smile. She thought she was just eating light for easier digestion, but in reality, her stomach was already being crowded by a small tumor, slowly growing year by year. By the time we discovered it, that tumor had already blocked half her stomach. And then there's something many people confuse: stomach polyps. You can picture a polyp like a tiny mushroom growing on the lining of the stomach. Most are harmless, like a small scar that causes no trouble. But a few with unusual features can turn into cancer over time. I've met patients who came to me in fear. "Doctor, I have a polyp. Does this mean I'm going to get cancer?" And I always sat with them and explained not every polyp becomes cancer, but polyps must be monitored just as you'd keep an eye on a tree in your garden. Most will bloom, but some may wither or rot. Why do I share these stories instead of reciting dry definitions? Because I believe that when you can picture stomach and esophageal cancer not as medical terms, but as real stories of real people, they feel closer and far less terrifying. Have you ever felt food stuck in your throat, or your stomach heavy and bloated after meals? Perhaps you told yourself, it's just eating too fast, it's just age. But what I want you to ask today is, if my body is sending me a signal, shouldn't I listen more carefully? The most important thing in understanding these illnesses is knowing that they differ in location, symptoms, and severity, but they share one truth: they begin silently. And it's that silence that makes so many people discover them too late. I often tell my patients, cancer doesn't arrive overnight. It's like an uninvited guest knocking little by little. The question is, do we Open the door early to check or wait until half the house is already taken over. So don't panic if your doctor tells you that you have a polyp or that you've had reflux. Instead, take it as a reminder your body needs more care, more regular checkups, and healthier choices. Because distinguishing between esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, and stomach polyps is only the first step, but it's an essential step on the journey to protecting your health. And right after this, I'll share with you in more detail the different types of stomach and esophageal cancer, why they differ, and why it matters. But before we go there, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what signals has my body sent me over? The years that I may have ignored, my dear friend. When we talk about stomach cancer or esophageal cancer, many people imagine it as just one single disease, one single tumor. But in reality, it is more like a family with many different faces. And recognizing each of those faces is incredibly important because it determines how we treat it, the outcome, and even the chance of survival. I remember one morning in the hospital having to explain biopsy results to a patient's family. They kept asking me, but cancer is cancer. Why so many types, doctor? I looked at their anxious eyes and answered, just like in a family. Some are gentle, some are fiery, some live long, some pass too soon. Cancer is the same. Only when we know what type it is can we know how to face it. Stomach cancer. Some types of stomach cancer grow slowly, like a small stream winding through rocks. Doctors call this the intestinal type, often found in older people linked to diet and long-term ulcers. Patients with this type, if discovered early, usually have better outcomes because it develops step by step from inflammation to changes in the lining and in finally cancer. But there is another kind far more aggressive and silent, the diffuse type. It doesn't wait, it doesn't follow a path. Instead, it spreads across the stomach like a fog. Patients with this type are often younger, sometimes without clear symptoms. I once had a patient only 40 years old, no smoking, no drinking, just occasional stomach aches. Yet by the time we found it, his stomach was already taken over by the tumor. That story always reminds me cancer spares no one, and it doesn't follow any fair rules. Esophageal cancer. Esophageal cancer also has two main phases. One is squamous cell carcinoma, commonly found in people who smoke, drink, or eat unhealthily. This type is like a crack in a water pipe, at first small, but slowly spreading until the pipe is blocked. Patients often feel food stuck, like something is blocking their throat. The other is adenocarcinoma, often born from chronic acid reflux. Imagine acid rising into the esophagus day after day, like acid rain, dripping on stone. At first, the stone stands strong, but over years, it wears down, changes, and finally becomes fertile ground for cancer to grow. What troubles me most is that many patients dismiss reflux as just a small discomfort fixed with a few pills. But what they don't realize is that every burn, every sour taste is a tiny scratch on the esophagus, and repeated thousands of times, those scratches become the road to cancer. Why is distinction important? You may ask, doctor, why should I care about all these types and isn't it just cancer? But I want you to understand each type is a different opponent. Some move slowly, some strike hard. Some can be stopped by surgery, others need chemotherapy, radiation, even immunotherapy. And only when we know which enemy we face do we know which weapon to choose. One of my patients once asked, doctor, is it fair that I lived healthy and still got cancer while my neighbor smoked all his life? And it's fine, I answered with a sad smile. Cancer is not punishment or reward. It's the sum of many factors: genetics, lifestyle, environment, and yes, luck. But one thing is certain, the more we understand the enemy, the greater our chance of winning. So when you hear about the types of stomach and esophageal cancer, don't be overwhelmed. Think of it as recognizing the face of a stranger knocking at your door. If you know who it is, you can choose to close the door, sound the alarm, or send him away. That is why medical knowledge, even when complex, must be told in simple stories so that you, I, and all of us can understand and act. Now, you see, cancer doesn't just have one face. It is a whole family of shapes and forms. But what they all share is this: if discovered early, there is still hope to change the ending. And that hope is the light in the darkness. My dear friend, when people hear the word cancer, many imagine it arrives suddenly, like a storm sweeping across a clear blue sky. But in truth, cancer never comes overnight. It is the result of years, even decades, of silent changes inside the body, like drops of water slowly wearing away. Stone until one day the stone cracks. Why does stomach cancer form? Let's start with the stomach. The stomach is a miraculous pouch where gastric acid and enzymes work together to digest everything we eat. But think about it, each day we send so many different foods. There's some healthy, some greasy, some salty, smoked, or charred. And within that flow, there can appear a hidden enemy, Helicobacter pylori, or HP for short. I remember holding the endoscopy results of one patient. On the screen, the stomach lining was fiery red, scarred like a burnt field. That was the mark of HP. Not everyone has this bacteria, but once it takes hold, it injures the lining, causing chronic ulcers. And as you know, when a wound is scraped again and again, the body repairs it. Poorly, the cells begin to reproduce with errors, and one day it turns into cancer. Stomach cancer is also fueled by eating habits. I once asked a patient, "What's your favorite food?" He smiled. "Nothing beats dried fish grilled over charcoal with pickled vegetables." He said it with pride because it reminded him of childhood. But tragically, those very foods loaded with salt and nitrosamines were the reason he developed stomach cancer after 30 years. The meals that bring joy, today when repeated daily, can become poison, silently stored in the body. What about esophageal cancer? Esophageal cancer often begins with acid reflux. Picture the esophagus. As a soft tube connecting throat to stomach, it wasn't built to withstand acid. Yet every time we overeat, lie down after dinner, or drink and smoke, acid flows back up, scratching the lining. Once is fine. 100 times, 1,000 times, and the lining grows tough, changes, and finally gives rise to cancer. I recall a man named Robert. He was a truck driver, often eating, irregularly drinking sodas to stay awake. For years, he grew used to heartburn behind the wheel. But what he didn't know was that those sodas, along with skipped meals and late nights, were scarring his esophagus. By the time he came to us, his esophageal adenocarcinoma was already advanced. His story always reminds me, never ignore the little things. Genetics and age. Beyond lifestyle and bacteria, there are genes. I once treated a family where both father and son had stomach cancer. Testing showed they carried a mutation that made their stomach lining vulnerable. Genetics is not destiny, but it is a seed, and environment, and habits decide whether it grows into disease. And then there is age, the silent accomplice. When we're young, our cells are like strong builders, repairing damage quickly and precisely. But as we grow older, those builders tire, make mistakes, and patch the wrong way. Out of those small mistakes, cancer is born. The process from normal to cancer, you can imagine this journey as a book. Such a first page is a healthy stomach or esophagus. Later, inflammation, redness, small ulcers. Then dysplasia cells begin to look different. And finally, in the last chapters, cancer appears. This book takes years, even decades to write, which means we have many chances to stop turning the pages, to close the book early. But only if we go for checkups, only if we listen, can we know which page we are on. A philosophical view. I often tell patients cancer is not your fault. It is a mix of genetics, lifestyle, and environment. But I also believe part of it is in our hands, because every day we choose what to eat, how to live, whether to rest. And those choices, though small, can make the difference between health and disease. Think about it. If each morning you chose oatmeal instead of salted. Meet if each evening you walked instead of reaching for another beer. If each year you spent a morning on an endoscopy instead of skipping it, your body might have thanked you with 10 or 20 more years of healthy life. That is how cancer forms, not overnight, but through small daily choices repeated again and again. And if habits can create cancer, I believe habits can also prevent it. My dear friend, when I tell a patient they have stomach or esophageal cancer, the first thing I often see in their eyes is fear. A fear that needs no words. I can feel it just by looking. And I understand why. These are dangerous diseases, not only because they can take life, but because they are silent, hidden, and often reveal themselves only when it's too late. The danger of silence. Stomach and esophageal cancer rarely knock on the door with sharp pain. At the start, they're not like a heart attack forcing you into the hospital in minutes. Instead, they're like a stranger slipping quietly into your home, sitting in the dark corner, until one day you realize the room is almost taken over. I remember one afternoon, George, a patient of mine, sat in my office, hands trembling as he held his test results. He said, "Doctor, I only felt a little bloated. I thought it was indigestion." How is it stage? 3 cancer. Now, I couldn't give him a simple answer because the painful truth is this: when stomach cancer shows clear symptoms, it is often already advanced. And that is why it is so dangerous. Speed and spread. Once formed stomach and esophageal cancers can grow fast, spreading into nearby organs, the liver, pancreas, lungs, like a small match. Flame in the kitchen, if not put out early, it burns down the whole or house. I once treated a woman named Patricia. By the time she came, her stomach tumor had spread to her lymph nodes. I saw in her eyes the worry not for herself, but for her young grandchildren. She told me, "Doctor, I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid I won't live to see them grow up." That is the cruelty of cancer. It attacks the body, but also love, dreams, and unfinished hopes. Survival rates, the numbers speak. Research shows if detected early, the 5-year survival rate can be up to 90%. But if detected late, that number falls to only 10–20%. You see, the danger is not only in the disease itself, but in the thin line between early and late. Just a few months delay, a few ignored signals can turn 10 years of life into only months. The toll on body and spirit. Cancer doesn't just take health, it steals joy. Esophageal cancer. Patients often struggle to swallow, sometimes needing feeding tubes. Stomach cancer can cause vomiting after meals, rapid weight loss, exhaustion. I once saw an elderly man sitting quietly in the hospital holding a bowl of thin porridge, eating tiny spoonfuls. He used to love family, feasts, laughing loudly. But since esophageal cancer, that joy was gone. He told me, "Doctor, the disease didn't just take my health, it took away the joy of sitting at the table with my family." That is the true danger of cancer, not only measured in survival rates, but in what it steals from life itself. A different view. Yet I want you to understand, danger does not mean hopelessness. Stomach and esophageal cancers are dangerous because they are silent. But that same silence makes prevention and early detection priceless. Darkness frightens us, but even a small light can drive it away. That light is knowledge, vigilance, and healthy habits. You may be watching this video worried, asking, "Could I have this disease?" What I want to tell you is this: don't let fear control you. Let it motivate you. Motivate you to get regular checkups, to change your diet, to care for your body like a precious garden. Yes, cancer is dangerous, but if we detect it early, if we prevent it, it is not a death sentence. It is a challenge, a mountain that can be climbed. My dear friend, I often tell my patients prevention is the cheapest, simplest, and most effective medicine. Stomach and esophageal cancers may sound frightening, but believe me, we are not powerless waiting for fate. We can do so much to reduce the risk, and it all begins with the simple choices we make every day: what we eat, what we drink, and how we live. Food enemy or friend? Have you ever noticed that a family meal is more than rice and vegetables? It's a reflection of the family's health. I once had a patient, Mr. William, who lived his whole life eating salty foods. For him, no meal was complete without pickles or smoked meat. Later, when he developed stomach cancer, he sighed, "If only I had eaten less salt earlier." Salt, pickled foods, smoked meats, charred dishes, these all raise the risk of stomach cancer. Studies show nitrosamines and benzopyrene in such foods can damage cell DNA. And when DNA is harmed, cells can grow the wrong way, leading to cancer. But other foods act like loyal friends, protecting us daily. Fresh vegetables, fruits, whole grains, green tea, omega-3, rich fish all contain antioxidants and compounds that help the body resist damage. I.e., once had a patient, Mrs. Eleanor, over 70, but still strong, with healthy teeth and glowing skin. When I asked her secret, she smiled. "I grow a small garden. Every day I eat fresh greens and drink green tea." That's not magic, it's science. Drinks choices for health. Have you felt heartburn after soda or beer? That burning isn't just discomfort, it's acid attacking your esophagus. Too much soda, alcohol, or very strong coffee worsens reflux, damaging the esophagus. On the other hand, water-warm tea and gentle herbal teas like chamomile or ginger are soothing streams for the esophagus. I often advise patients start the day with warm water instead of strong coffee. Let the body wake gently, not forced by caffeine. Habits, the silent companions. Did you know just 30 minutes of walking daily can lower the risk of many cancers, including stomach and esophageal? Exercise improves digestion, reduces obesity, a key risk, and boosts immunity and mood. I once treated a man over 65. After stomach surgery, he began walking in his garden each morning. He told me at first every step was hard, but each step pulled me closer to life. Today, past 75, he still strolls, still watches the sunrise. Eat slowly, chew well, listen to your body. There's a simple habit often overlooked: eating slowly and chewing. Well, eating fast forces the stomach and esophagus to work harder. Chewing thoroughly eases digestion and allows the body to signal fullness, preventing overeating, a common cause of reflux. One of my patients, Mrs. Mary, often complained of bloating. I noticed she ate too quickly. When I advised her to slow down, something amazing happened. Her symptoms improved dramatically. Sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine, but from patience and small changes. A philosophical view: think of your body as a garden. Water it with clean water, feed it with good soil, and it thrives. Neglect it, let weeds grow, and one day it withers. Our body's the same. Food, drink, and daily habits are the soil and water. What we sow, we reap. Cancer cannot always be prevented completely, but its risk can be greatly reduced through the little choices we make each day. And I believe that when we care for our body with love, it rewards us with resilience and with many more healthy years alongside our families. My dear friend, there's a question patients often ask me: Doctor, am I in the high-risk group for cancer? And each time I sit with them, look them in the eye, and answer with honesty: no one is completely safe, but no one is completely helpless either. There are factors that raise the risk, and knowing them is the first step in protecting yourself. Age, the companion we cannot avoid. Let's start with age. After 50, the body is no longer as resilient. Cells, after billions of divisions, begin to make more mistakes, and when mistakes aren't repaired, they can become the seeds of cancer. Akinamai once treated a 72-year-old man who said, "Doctor, I'm old. Illness is just natural." But he still smiled when we found it early because he wanted to live to see his grandson graduate college. Aging doesn't mean giving up. It means caring for ourselves more than ever. Habits, the silent accomplices. Those who smoke or drink heavily put themselves in the highest risk group. I remember a patient named Frank. He had smoked since he was 20. By his 60s, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. Holding his last cigarette, he said, "I wish I had quit sooner." Not only smoking alcohol, too, is a false friend. It brings brief joy at parties, but over time it burns the lining of the stomach and esophagus. One day those burns turn into tumors, obesity, and inactivity. People who are overweight are also at higher risk. Extra belly fat increases pressure on the stomach, worsening acid reflux. I once saw a patient weighing over 100 kilograms diagnosed with esophageal cancer. He sighed, "I always thought obesity was only about diabetes. I never imagined cancer." A sedentary lifestyle, sitting too much, lying down after meals, is like opening the door and inviting illness in. The body needs movement. Movement aids digestion, strengthens immunity, and helps keep weight under control. Medical history. Anyone with chronic stomach ulcers, Helicobacter pylori infection, or long-term reflux is also at risk. I recall a woman named Janet. She lived with reflux for years, only taking pills when symptoms were severe. Later, she was diagnosed with esophageal adenocarcinoma. Crying, she said, "If only I hadn't ignored the heartburn." Genetics and family. In some families, cancer feels like a shadow across generations. If your parents or siblings had stomach or esophageal cancer, your risk is higher. But remember, genetics is not destiny. It is only one factor. How you live, eat, and care for yourself, that is the key that opens or closes the door to disease. A life perspective. I want you to pause and ask, do I fall into any of these risk groups? If the answer is yes, don't panic. See it as your body's gentle reminder. Like noticing storm clouds, you can't stop the rain, but you can carry an umbrella, you can find shelter. Knowing your risk is not despair, it is an opportunity to act early. My dear friend, the danger of cancer is not in who it chooses, but in whether we recognize the signs and protect ourselves. And if you're here listening now, it means you've already taken one step ahead of the disease. My dear friend, by now you may be wondering if one day I or someone I love is diagnosed with stomach or esophageal cancer, is there still hope? My answer is yes, and sometimes more than you imagine. Treatment options, more than one road. In over 30 years at the hospital, I've seen patients walk in with fear in their eyes and later leave after years of treatment with peace in their smiles. Why? Because medicine today is no longer just one path, it is many working together. Surgery, often the first choice if caught early, the tumor in part. of the stomach or esophagus are removed then reconnected. It sounds frightening, but many patients live well afterward, eating normally. With small adjustments, one patient, Richard, had 2/3 of his stomach removed. He learned to eat smaller meals more often. Today, he still walks with his wife in the park each morning. Autourine, chemotherapy and radiation. These are the warriors that destroy remaining cancer cells after surgery or shrink tumors before surgery. They can cause side effects, hair loss, nausea, but I always remind patients these are temporary, life is forever. Targeted and immunotherapy. Modern medicine's breakthroughs. Instead of attacking the whole body, these drugs strike directly at cancer. Cells like arrows hitting the bullseye. I've seen patients in late stages live 5 to 7 more quality years thanks to immunotherapy gardening. Traveling, holding grandchildren. Chances of success, hope is real. Some ask me, doctor, is treatment worth it when I'm already over 70? I answer with another question. Do you still want to see your grandson's wedding? Do you want to sit beside your wife for a few more? Springs are a one. Treatment can be exhausting, yes, but success is not only measured in years added, but in the quality of those years. Medical statistics show, if caught early, surgery can cure over 90% of cases. In mid-stages, combining surgery and chemotherapy, the 5-year survival rate is still encouraging. Even in late stages, treatment can ease pain, extend life, and preserve dignity. Life after treatment, challenges, not the end. I won't hide it. Patients may face after effects. Some lose weight quickly. Some cannot eat much. Some need feeding tubes for a time. But I have seen many overcome it all. Margaret, one of my patients after esophageal surgery, could only eat thin porridge for months. But she didn't give up. She practiced spoon. By spoon, practiced breathing, practiced walking. 2 years later, she smiled and told me, doctor, I still eat slower than my husband, but I live to see my granddaughter born. That is worth it. A philosophical view, cancer is not the end. Cancer may change how we eat, how we live, but it doesn't have to steal our joy. I always tell patients cancer treatment is not only about defeating disease, but learning how to live fully with it. Think of it this way. If a familiar road is blocked, we take a detour. It may be longer, harder, but if we want to reach our destination, we find a way. Cancer treatment is the same. It is not easy, but it gives us a chance to live more, to love more, to experience more of life's beauty. My dear friend, if one day you or someone you love hears that diagnosis, don't look only at fear. Look at medicine. See how far it has come. Look at others who have gone before and are still living. Well, and remember, cancer is not a period. It can be a comma, a pause, before we continue writing our story in deeper, more meaningful ways. My dear friend, after everything we've discussed, from how cancer forms to its dangers to the treatments, I want to pause here and tell you something. Simple yet important: cancer is not an unchangeable fate. We can prevent it, we can detect it early, and we can live healthier if we hold on to hope. Prevention, building a fence with small habits. I remember a patient once said, doctor, if I had known that salty food, smoking, and drinking were so dangerous, I would have changed long ago. I smiled gently and told him, it's never too late to change. Preventing cancer is not about doing something big. Sometimes it's just choosing warm water over soda, a plate of vegetables over salted, meet a walk in the garden instead of hours in front of a screen. These little choices repeated daily are the strongest fence we can build for our bodies. Screening, the golden ticket to win back time. Do you know what troubles me most? When a patient comes at the final stage and says, if only I had gone for a checkup earlier. Cancer screening, endoscopy, blood tests isn't meant to scare you, but to help you stay one step ahead. Early detection multiplies survival chances. I often compare screening to car maintenance. You don't wait for the car to break down in the middle of the road, do you? So why wait for the body to cry out before we check it? Vaccines, hope for the next generation. Science is working on a vaccine against Helicobacter pylori, the main culprit in stomach cancer. If successful, it would be a breakthrough, just as the hepatitis B vaccine greatly reduced liver cancer. Maybe you and I don't yet have access to it, but our children and grandchildren might, and that alone is reason for hope. Faith, the medicine no prescription can provide. In 30 years of being a doctor, I've learned this: faith is stronger than any drug. I've seen patients in the same stage with the same treatment, yet their outcomes differ completely. Those who kept faith, who stayed hopeful, often healed better, had fewer complications, and lived longer. I remember Rose in her 70s. When she heard she had esophageal cancer, she didn't cry. She simply held my hand and said, "Doctor, I still have a rose garden to care for. I must live to see them bloom." And she did. After treatment, she returned to her garden healthier than when she was diagnosed. Faith doesn't erase illness, but it gives us strength to endure hard days. It gives us a reason to wake up, to take another step, to smile at those we love. Final message. My dear friend, when I share this with you, I'm not only speaking as a doctor, but as someone past 60 who has seen friends and family face illness. I understand your worries. And I also know that in darkness, even the smallest light can guide the way. Prevention, screening, vaccines, faith. These are the 4 keys I want to leave with you today. Think of them as 4 bricks building a foundation for the years ahead. And please remember, you are not alone. I, along with millions of others, am walking this journey with you. My dear friend, we've walked a long journey together, understanding what stomach and esophageal cancers are, how they form, why they're dangerous, and how to prevent, screen, treat, and hold on to hope. I know this has not just been medical knowledge, but stories that touch the heart, because every illness is tied to a person, a family, a dream left unfinished. And now, as this video comes to an end, I don't want you to stop it. Just listening, I want you to act. If you have symptoms that worry you, don't hesitate to see a doctor. If you know a loved one who is ignoring heartburn or persistent stomach pain, share this video with them. And if you have a question, a story, or even just a fear you'd like to express, write it in the comments. I'll be here listening and walking with you. I've always believed knowledge only has true value when it is shared. Maybe today you share this video with a friend, and tomorrow that simple action could save their life. That is how we as individuals can build a healthier community together. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like it, share it on your page, or send it to someone you care about. And most importantly, hit subscribe and tap the little bell so you won't miss future videos on health, nutrition, and simple but powerful prevention tips. I know sometimes you may wonder, do these small changes really help? My answer is yes, because health is not a sprint, it's a long journey. And on that journey, every small change today can bring you many peaceful years tomorrow. My dear friend, we cannot choose the number of years we live, but we can choose how we live, living healthy, living meaningfully, and living with the confidence that we've done all we can to protect ourselves and those we love. Thank you for staying with me until this moment. I look forward to seeing you in the next videos, where we'll continue to share, learn, and walk together in this journey of proactive health. Wishing you and your family health and peace, and remember, I am always here walking with you.